There we go. God, spinning wheel for 2 minutes there. All right, let's get our Facebook group coming in here. Got the spinning wheels for Facebook. Hopefully they go a little quicker. Oh, we had an error on one. Let's try it one more time. There it goes. Okay. All right. Well, it's a little clunky this morning with technology, but we're getting there. And welcome in. It is May 2nd, 2023. It's Tuesday morning, 7:37 a.m. Mountain Time. A little bit off the rails here because of trying to work out my technology, but that's okay. And it's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how are you doing out there? How is the weather in Atlanta? Did you guys flip back to the warmth? Because we flipped back
Cold.
to the cold. It's cold
It's
there.
cold. That's what I said. It
Mm.
reminds me the first time when I moved out to California, it was about this time, and they they call it like May gray and June gloom, and it's cold. It's like the two coldest months of the year. So I'm already in sandals and t-shirt and shorts out walking my dog, and I'm freezing my ass off when I'm out there. That's how it felt yesterday. It was like 55 and windy. God, it was windy as all get out. I'm like, this is cold. It's May. May, you're more than likely to see 90s in May than 50s, and it was 45 this morning.
Ugh, man, yeah, it's cold here again. We had 3 beautiful days just recently, and guess what? They fell on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So guess who didn't get to go outside, other than dog walking, and did go to a nice little rooftop bar in the north end of Seattle, like the 20th floor, and the mountains were out, so it was a good time. They actually had a deal of a drink that was called "When the Mountain's Out," so it's a big deal out here in Seattle when you get to see Rainier because it's half the time covered in a veil of clouds or fog. So it's beautiful out, and summer's coming, so that'll be great. And everybody else is coming in the chat, joining us here. We got Diamond Rattler saying, boom, let's go. Good to see you, Diamond.
Diamond's been a while.
Yeah, Diamond showed up in the draft a few times. So it was good to see Diamond. Hope you're doing well. There's a certain player he didn't want to draft. I can't remember. Maybe he didn't want the Drew Sanders pick when it came through. I can't recall. David Yunkin coming in saying, good morning, Broncos country. Hope everyone had a great weekend. It was long, but my voice feels better today, so that's good. I think Mims will be a slot player, and the linebacker will be like the Cowboys everything linebacker. So yeah, David's getting into the topic at hand here. I want to say hello to everybody first, but the roles of the 2023 draft class, who's here, who's not here, what's their pathway, best case scenario, worst case scenario, et cetera, et cetera. And I think at some point over the summer, maybe Scott and I we'll give each other a little bit of homework, and we'll really watch like 4 or 5 games of each of these guys and like dig in real deep, like a whole show on a specific player or something like that. So I started rewatching. I watch a lot of these guys, but it's kind of a blur sometimes. So I restarted watching Drew Sanders yesterday because he was my favorite pick off the cuff. I'm like, okay, I want to revisit this, and I watched him versus South Carolina and Texas A&M yesterday. So some splash plays, but also some things that you see like, oh, that's why he's there in the early 3rd round. So we'll get into it here. Not a perfect prospect, but you're talking about pick 76 overall. What do you expect? Kevin Gray, good morning, Broncos country, guys. Salute. There we go. Salute to you, too. Hope you're doing well. Talking about linebackers, and he shall appear. DWI guys, Ethan saying, good morning, Jensen, Broncos country. Hope you're doing well. We got Austin H saying, my Devils won last night and not BFB. What a start to the week.
And now BFB.
Okay, and now BFB. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
we're winning. He's not saying that we didn't win. The Devils won and not BFB. Broncos didn't. The Broncos for breakfast didn't win.
No.
I don't think that's what he meant.
Well, we didn't win either, so it's okay. No, we're winning, hanging out today.
We're all winners here.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm not a hockey fan at all, really. But definitely am riding the Seattle Kraken wave. So sorry to Avalanche, but I'm pulling for the Nuggets. So you guys can have that one. Nuggets winning the championship all the way. I'm all about that. Mark Schrader, good morning, all. Good to see you, Mark. We also had Mark coming in with $20 saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. Well, God bless you, Mark. That's so helpful. As the ticker says here underneath, super chats on YouTube and stars on Facebook help your host. Support the channel and help your host. So they help Scott and I. So when you do stuff like that, obviously just coming in and hanging out, that's all we really ask. But if you want to go above and beyond, something like Mark here dropping a super chat is, God, just beyond words. Thank you so much, Mark. Zach Powers, morning with a coffee. Good to see you, Zach, ZP. Gary Palmer, the notorious GLP. Hope you're doing well. Colin Wood saying they all sound pretty damn good right now, but again, they always do. Yeah, we are in the, as I like to call it, the honeymoon period. And the honeymoon period, everything's great until...
You know what's interesting, though, Nick?
What?
Give me your George Payton impersonation of introducing the Nick Bonito pick last year.
I don't remember at all.
It was wet bread. I mean, it was, yeah, we got this guy, and he's really got to get in the weight room. It's like, got to get in the weight room was like the first thing out of his mouth. Now we're really excited about the speed that he brings. So it was interesting. Normally we got every guy we wanted. This guy's going to come in and help us, and we'll see. And we're probably going to cut him in 2 years. But no, they don't say that part of it. But yeah, they all sound pretty good. But last year, they really hedged their bets on the Benito pick. I wonder if George Payton, it's a collaborative process, but last year it was George Payton's draft, or it should have been, which begs the question: who the hell was in charge last year? When you got Dwayne Stukes is making picks and Nathaniel Hackett's making picks. Well, no,
Russell
it's
Wilson
George
is
Payton's
making
draft.
picks.
This is Sean Payton's one this year.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Sean Payton. I got no questions about it this year.
Yeah.
But last year, you wonder if there was some discussion, because when George Payton was on the clock, he wasn't all that over the moon about the Nick Benito pick.
I am under the impression with that Nick Benito pick that they had they were 4 picks away and they had 3 guys on their board, and they went all right before Denver picked. So you had James Cook, apparently they were pretty high on, Drake Jackson they were pretty high on, and Cam Taylor-Britt. And I think they liked all those guys, and they sat there and like, oh, one's going to fall, and didn't. Again, I just heard it from multiple people on that way. Now, granted, some of this might be Nick Benito struggled hindsight, but there seemed to be that at least impression that they made a pick and going for positional value long term. And we'll see. I'm pulling for Nick Benito this year. Obviously, has great tools still. And I heard that on Saturday when they're going in for their press conference or whatever, that Benito and Christopher Allen were in the weight room in the morning beating everybody else in there. So you like to hear that.
When you're drafting edges in the 60s, if you get an immediate impact, something went wrong in a good way. But you shouldn't be able to get an immediate impact edge in the 60s.
No,
those guys are going earlier than that. They're developmental guys.
That said, when you are down Gregory and Baron Browning and Nick Chubb, and you're game day and activating your 2nd round pick in favor of a guy you just traded for, and then like a 7th round pick and undrafted free agents, that's when it's like,
I'm not ready to write him off yet.
Yes, 100%.
I didn't have high expectations for him in his first year.
Yeah.
Yep. Doesn't mean he can't become a player.
And even if he just becomes a good number 3, that's fine. It's a rotational position. Isaiah Stacks coming in saying, good morning, Broncos country. Hope you're doing well. Clayton Huron saying, morning, guys. Heading to work. Had to pop in and show some love. Smash that like button and share. Yeah, you guys, we have way more viewers here than likes right now. So click the thumbs up. Click the wow like Chase. We appreciate you, Chase, with the wow react. Hope you're doing well. Michaela Israel coming in. Good morning, guys. Good morning to you and Coop. Hope you guys are doing well. DJ Capo. Good morning, Broncos family. Come down here to New Orleans. It's 93. Oh, I would melt at 93. I need it to be like between 50 and 80. Anything outside of that range, and I'm uncomfortable. I'm kind of like a golden retriever in that way. Although my dog loves the snow, so I guess I can't say the 50.
Hottest I've ever been in my life was September 5th, 1995, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for a night game at LSU where my idiot friends wanted to go out at 8 o'clock in the morning after we got in at about 7:30 in the morning to go find their ticket to the game.
Woof.
Ugh. It was awful.
That sounds horrible.
Central Florida, New Orleans, the swamp down there. Those are 2 places I don't want to be most of the year.
Hottest I've ever been was 2 years ago out here in Seattle. But because of where Seattle is, we don't have air conditionings in most places. And we got stuck with something called the heat dome. And it was 113 degrees for like 2 days and no air conditioning. So we pretty much lived in a
hotel.
We didn't. We lived in the basement with fans and just pretty much hid in the darkness. We had like blackout curtains that helped a lot. But,
turn off the lights. Turn off the lights.
Shut the door. Tape the doors. We even put like cardboard and stuff in the windows to reflect the heat and stuff because we had huge windows up front. But Chase Wallner, enough about the weather. I'm saying howdy. Actually not. He said, what's up, boys? 82 here in Florida yesterday. That sounds nice. Dominique Martin, morning, boys. Morning, family. Hope you're doing well. Lance Johnson coming in. Top of the morning to you, fellas. Good to see you. Philip Hogginson. Good morning, everyone. Ernie Mays. Good morning to you, Ernie. We won't break down the other classes today. Dave Glassman saying happy birthday to Mrs. Glassman. Happy birthday to Mrs. Glassman. Shout out to Mrs. Glassman from Dave. Clinton Caldwell, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Fallen Angels saying that's why I said get a starter at 67. The question for me is who is the starter at 67? The guys that a lot of people were screaming for there, Luke Weipler, he went in the 6th. I mean, I guess you maybe could have taken a guy that I like there in Ricky Stromberg, but I would have rather had the guy who, projects as a better athlete and probably a better overall player long term at 67 than so I don't know. I'm as against the value and pushback against the classical value of linebacker as anybody. And I love the Drew Sanders pick. Pick 67, if you can get a plus starter there at any spot, that's great. And the fact that Sanders is a pressure player as well, in the words of Sean Payton, somebody who can bring something to the pass rush, especially if you're going to be more of a pressure oriented front seven, I think that's a really awesome fit for you long term. So I think Drew Sanders, and we'll get into the picks here, but I think that was a great pick. I don't know if I would have gone a different direction at all than how that fell there. I mean, we never had a simulator fall once where I think Drew Sander was available because he was like 20th overall on the big board, and we never turned up the randomization that much. But that's the reason sometimes you do turn up that randomization, Scott, right? Because wonky things happen.
Right. And after round one, I started turning down positional value. You know, because the teams were taking running backs, linebackers. Like, okay, well, in this draft, positional value, because it was not considered as talented a draft, especially in the first round, that they were going with different positions to try and get better players, as opposed to reaching for a positional value. Because you know what has no positional value? A dud. You know, a guy that misses. That doesn't do you any good. Oh, well, we want positional value, but he sucks. You didn't get any value there. You got no value. So again, we've talked before about how you can get better players. You got to start them somewhere. You know, if in non-traditional positions of value later on, because they've fallen because they're not playing positions of value. So you get better players there. So not a bad way to go. And I look at the next 10 picks. There's nobody that really makes me go, that's the guy you should have gotten. You know, for me, I probably, before I go, oh yeah, I probably have to go all the way down to 82 for Tampa Bay and Yaya Diaby. I probably would have liked that pick, and that would have seemed high. We would have gone, wow. Tucker Kraft, maybe. You could probably talk me into that one, Nick. I didn't watch him, but you know, you've got me convinced. Maybe Zach Harrison, you know, but I think Drew Sanders is probably a more instant impact type of guy because of special teams. And after that, you know, maybe one of the wide receivers, but I already got one, you know, so Drew Sanders is a pretty solid pick.
Yeah, and I'm excited for him long term, and we'll get into it. But first, Troy Bauer coming in. Troy's been killing it with us, quickly becoming one of our regulars. Saying, good morning. Do you guys think the Broncos are waiting to trade Sutton until the June 1st designation to save $14 million on the cap instead of $7 million pre-June 1st? So they save $14 million against the cap this season. They still have to spread that dead cap out somewhere, so it would be cut between 2023 and 2024, I believe, if they do that. So go ahead, Scott.
The other part of that is you might be saving, but you're saving cash. You're not necessarily saving room against the cap because you're taking a dead cap hit. So it's like saying you have $20 and you're going to save 10, but I'm only going to let you spend 15. So you still lose 5. Does that make sense? So you're still losing. You're not allowed to spend 20 anymore. You're only allowed to spend. You're going to get 10 back here, but now we're not going to let you spend 20. We're only going to let you spend 15. So you still lose money. Financially, it just doesn't make any sense to me to trade Courtland Sutton this year. It goes beyond something else. And what are you going to get back? You know, are you going to go player for player and you're getting someone else's depreciated asset? That's not a good thing. So you're probably going to get a 2024 pick anyway at this point because you're not going to get a 2023 pick. That ship has sailed. And you're much better off doing that after this season, before next year's draft anyway. Let Sutton play out. Maybe increases his value if you want to. I'll say it a zillion times. It's a culture fit. It's a personality, culture, something beyond the tangible that we can see if he's traded before this season.
Maybe. I definitely don't think you're wrong in that take, but from everything I've heard, they do like Courtland Sutton, the person. I think it was just more like we need to find ways to get different players to overturn this roster in our vision who are our actually tradable assets. Because like, what are you getting right now for Nick Benito? A 6? What are you getting for, Greg Dulcich? A 5? Like I believe they thought they could get like a third or like combination of a couple, like a 4 and a 5.
But this
Sutton.
Question is, are they waiting now? Would they do it now? So I don't think so. I
Yeah.
don't think you trade him this year. If you didn't get him, if he didn't move before this draft, I just don't see him getting moved
Hmm.
unless it goes beyond the player and the pay.
Yeah. Certainly possible, and I think that maybe some of it is also the money they'd take on. I know that apparently there's a deal out there that's been somewhat, back under the table agreed upon for Dalvin Cook to be traded post June 1st for the contract because it's easier for the Vikings to move on from him if they can split that dead cap. So maybe there's something on the back end there. I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked still if Sutton ended up being traded just from what I've heard. It would be about 2024 asset accumulation at that point if they did do that. But it's certainly a possibility. I just don't think it's overly likely. And I'm with you, Scott, on the if you want to trade him, why not just, improve his value some in an offense that should be better this year.
Right.
And the dead cap hit is less. Now, I guess you do lose another year of control, but
Yeah, but you're paying they're the other team isn't as committed either. They're not committing as much money
yeah.
to him either. So, he is getting older. We talked about this yesterday. That we're getting to the point now is like, what is Sutton going to be? He's 2 years removed. He's played 2 full seasons
Mhm.
since his knee injury. Okay, is this who he is now? And he's never going to reach the heights that we were expecting of
Mhm.
him from 2019 because we're starting to get into the time where age is going to start playing a factor on him. I think he's 28 this year, should
Yep.
be entering his prime. But what is his prime? What are our expectations? I sure would like to find out
Mhm.
with Sean Payton as my head coach. I sure would.
Yep. And I'm with you. He's somebody that you hopefully can pump his value up some. You're looking for like a late third, early fourth for him, and you're getting calls back about, fifth, sixth. Well, even though he's a year older, if he comes out there and plays much better in an offense that features him more, guess what? You're going to hopefully find a little bit more value for him. And just with how the contracts are set up for Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, one of those guys is not here next year. I can't imagine it happening that way. So,
Yeah, I
especially,
don't see three $20 million receivers.
yeah. And
It's
I
like
mean,
18 Judy.
yeah.
After next season, fifth year option should probably put him on. It's probably out there. I'll look it up in a minute. But Mike, off the cuff, I would say it's probably 11
I think it was
for Judy.
13.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood, low 8 figures.
Yep.
And Sutton and Patrick are 16 to 18. You're not going to have three $18 million receivers.
Nope. Just doesn't make sense. So we'll see what happens with Sutton and Patrick and the wide receiver room in general, and we'll get into that discussion here. Gary Palmer, 1999. Good morning, Nick and Scott, with only 6 picks. I think the Broncos did well. Yeah, the draft grades that taking into account the draft capital that the team had going into it, the overall expenditure of picks and the quality of picks does go into it. But in those kind of rankings, the Broncos came out pretty low because obviously they only had 5 picks and they were all lower in the draft. But for the ones where it's like the actual individual grades of each selection and the value on each selection, seems like the Broncos have done pretty well. Now, add the caveat that, of course, draft grades are all a little bit of hooey because they're dealing with more information than us, and some teams are better than the consensus on the boards. I mean, I remember it was I'll never forget the 2018 draft where the Chiefs traded up to get Patrick Mahomes, and people were giving him like C pluses and B minuses for the grade. It's like no Big 12 quarterback's ever done anything. He's erratic. He doesn't know what he's doing. Air raid offense, yada, yada, yada. If especially if you hit on that quarterback, nobody cares. Justin Herbert too. That was another one. People were
That was
guaranteeing
a
that he'd
hell of a
miss.
scouting job because
Yeah.
even the Chiefs themselves, like the Chiefs players, I don't remember which one it was, but he was quoted after the fact, in hindsight, after Patrick Mahomes becomes this guy. He's like, yeah, I didn't like when we saw him out there, as he first started practice with us, we are like, that's our first round pick? Really? Like he looked bad. That's a hell of a scouting process and development and everything that went into Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was not Trevor Lawrence coming in.
Mm-mm.
Trevor Lawrence is considered one of the best quarterback prospects in 7-8 years.
Mm-hmm.
You expect him to become a top 3 quarterback. No one really expected that from Patrick Mahomes, including the first-year Chiefs.
Yeah. Brett Veach, Andy Reid, Chris Ballard, Jim Nagy also had a big part of that too. So, yep. We had that was also Tyreek Hill.
It was Tyreek Hill that said that. I knew it was a name person because they don't quote Andrew Wiley, but it was Tyreek Hill that was saying that after the fact. And Gary, thank you so much for coming in.
Yep. And we also got Fallen Angels. And thank you. 1999, Gary. That's awesome. Fallen Angels saying is Mims better than Trey Palmer. And Trey Palmer went in the 6th, I believe. But yeah, I'm just a little bit surprised with how the speed of Trey Palmer and the fluidity that he plays with, that he wasn't taken earlier. Transfer from LSU to Nebraska, had a pretty good year at Nebraska. But Mims is younger. I think Mims is more explosive than Palmer. I think he's a looser player as well. Palmer's, I think he's fast and he's good, but sometimes I think he's got a little stiffness in his start and stop ability. I think he runs routes fine, but it doesn't look as overall fluid in space as you see with Mims. And I think another part of that is the special teams ability, the punt return ability. I mean, you see him, he can become a weapon with the ball in his hands. He's not the most physical player, but neither is Palmer. So definitely we'll be interested to see how those guys play out and how all the wide receivers that the Broncos passed on played out compared to the wide receiver they trade up for in Marvin Mims. You had Jalen Hyatt come right after. You had Tyler Scott come after. You had that other TCU wide receiver with some speed come after. Cedric Tillman come off the board after. And Tyler Scott went all the way in the 6th. So be fun to kind of follow that and see if the Broncos made the right evaluation to move up for that guy. Austin H says the Cardinals turned down the 5th-year option for Isaiah Simmons. You think it'd be an option in free agency next year? Certainly. Broncos are looking to bring in players. Isaiah Simmons was never really truly maximized his potential out there in Arizona. Not truly fast enough to be a deep safety, not truly big enough, good enough processing, physical enough to play in the box, not truly quick enough to play in the slot. Now, that said, if you want him to be kind of a matchup player and play some more slot and stuff, then it's certainly possible. And Scott, what's going on? You got a furrowed brow
I
there.
looked up Isaiah Simmons, and I had him confused with somebody else. I'm like, he's an offensive tackle, isn't he? No, he's a corner. So I just looked him up on PFF. He's listed 6'4", 240.
Yeah, he's 8th overall pick. He was that freak guy from Clemson who played edge
Holy
rusher.
I don't watch too much Arizona, and they weren't. He probably wasn't playing when they played the Broncos and Falcons last year because no one was. And if he was, he should be playing edge. Jesus.
They haven't been able to figure out how to use him.
Yeah, because
really.
they're trying to. I'm a DB. Well, no, you're not, dude. You're 6'4", 240 pounds.
He doesn't play physical.
Right. Yeah, and that's the problem. You might be a monster safety, but he's 6'4", 240. We've seen 6'4" guys go out there and do it. They're like 205 and they're pogo sticks.
Yeah. I like him.
Be honest, I haven't watched him that much, and wow.
Yeah, there's a reason he went 8 overall in that draft. He was kind of a super player at Clemson. I liked him coming out best as a overhang safety type that can be kind of a mismatch weapon that you can play him physical up in space as the slot, but his best traits were sometimes blitzing. So somebody who could then
So you know what his number one trait is by far? What did I just say? Pass rush.
Rushing? Yeah. He's not physical enough to play there on 1st and 2nd down. And that makes him kind of a weird
use
player.
him in an end where he just tries to beat somebody with a head fake and a juke where he's running around and where they never lay a finger on him. And if you can get a sack a game and finish with 17 sacks, you can make a lot of money. That guy, but he was a safety at least, was what was Taylor's name at USC?
Mays.
Taylor Mays. That's who that guy was. He was 6'3", 235 pounds, running 4 threes, jumping 45 inches, no instincts at all. But he'd come up with a big hit every now and then once he actually found the ball, and he'd make a big hit and make a splash play. But that's who that guy is. And I said from the beginning, I'm like, man, turn that guy into a designated pass rusher. You've got an athlete like that. You can't have him in a reaction, anticipation, reading type of spot. But with a guy with that type of athleticism, I can turn him loose on 3rd downs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a unique player. They still haven't quite figured out what he wants to do. It's so different playing linebacker, especially in the box. That's where they tried to put him. But will be interesting to see how it all plays out. We got Albert Knoppers coming in saying Eric's articles about the draft grades was great. Yeah, Eric does a lot of good work in the draft. So appreciate him and everything that him and Lance helped with this weekend. It was a fun time. Obviously, we were on air for like 17 hours or something. So that's I'm sure we said plenty of dumb stuff at that point. I kind of blacked out halfway through day 3. It's at some point, it's just like I have no idea where I am anymore. But we got Robbie Red coming in 199 saying Samaje Perine week 1 starter. We need another running back. Seems like it will be Samaje Perine week 1. And I would be shocked if the Broncos didn't bring in somebody else. I saw that Latavius Murray signed with the Bills. So Broncos are still in the hunt there for another person, but we'll see. how it plays out. Lance asking here, do you guys think all 6 Broncos players make the roster? It's hard to say right now. I think that definitely the first 3 guys will, but it's certainly possible that the last 2 could be practice squad guys or not even make it. I think they all will make it, but you never know at that point in the draft juncture, especially with how late that pick of Alex Forsyth was. He could be somebody who's a practice squad guy day 1. So will be fun to follow. And let's get into it, Scott. First, I want to talk about Marvin Mims here. We'll go just down the draft board. The Broncos trade up to 62 overall, trading with the Detroit Lions, sending 68 and flipping the Broncos 5th, I think, for an early 6th. I think that's how it worked out for that selection, moving back 50 spots. So Marvin Mims, Oklahoma, young player, played Z, played slot, averaged 20 yards catch out there. The last 2 years in Oklahoma was like an all-time receiving yards leader in Texas college or high school football history. And as somebody averaging like 20 yards a catch, 1,000 yards back-to-back seasons. What role do you expect Marvin Mims to play for this Broncos team year 1, considering the state of the Broncos receiver room right now?
I think you'll see him on special teams. I don't know what kind of gunner he is, but I sure would have him back there at camp fielding punts to see what he can do with his lateral quickness. I think he's got a chance to come in and be in the rotation in the top 3 or 4 right away. So a wide receiver 4 where he's coming in certain packages, and you drop him in the slot, you move him around, basically playing a role that we saw Jerry Jeudy play 18 of the last 24 months where he's inside. It might be a little better suited for it, depending on just find a way to get him the ball in space and let him go to work. That's your job. And then when you're in 4 wide receiver sets, I think he's one of your top 4 guys right now. Stretch the field, get down, anything and everything you thought you might get from KJ Hamler, you're hoping to get from Mims.
Yep. I agree with you 100% on that. Mike Gibbons, $20, saying thank you for the draft coverage. BFF best show on MNN. Maybe he means MHH. Are they right?
Mile 9 Huddle.
Mile 9 Huddle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Get your Nuddle right here.
That sounds really dirty. I don't know. Or it sounds like a type of like peanut butter.
I have a question here on top of the Marvin Mims, because he was a 2nd-round pick. That Orange Blood comes in. I like this question. He says, but how long should a team rely on high draft picks who deal with perpetual injuries to develop? Looking good on paper isn't good enough at this point, in my opinion. And usually the answer to that, Orange Blood, is 1 year before their contract is over, their rookie contract, because a high draft pick, relatively speaking, is still cheap, dirt cheap. So you're talking about Nick Bonito. In this case, Nick Bonito has a cap hit in 2024 of $1.5 million. Okay. That's nothing. I mean, that's less. It's almost 0.5% of the total payroll of a $250 million team. So are you willing to let him try and become something? Because I can put him on injured reserve. I can put these guys on reserve so they're not taking up a spot. They're just taking my money if I'm the owner. And in reality, it's not that much money. So you see them usually, if he's a 2nd-year guy and he's got a 4-year deal, a lot of times you'll see him give him 3 years. Who'd we lose last year? Melvin Ajim didn't see the last year of his contract.
Yep.
A guy like that, where you'll see 3 years. That will be your chance. And then if you're not producing, you're out of here. So I think that is probably the right answer. Orange Blood is 3 years, because in the grand scheme of football, and this is why you love these draft picks, they're cheap. They're really cheap.
But it's expensive to miss. Opportunity cost.
And then that's opportunity cost.
Yeah.
The opportunity cost can be very expensive, where I could have had this guy instead, and I took this one. Again, it's not the guys that you don't get. It's the guys you get that can't play that kill your team.
Yeah. Yeah. And that Broncos, what was it, 2020 draft class? That's after Jerry Jeudy, not very good, unfortunately. And we got this one already. Samaje week 1 starter. The Broncos do need another running back. But right now it does seem like Samaje Perine a week 1 starter. They'll bring in somebody else still. So we'll see. And to that point about how long do you wait on players, Scott, I think that with Sean Payton, it's going to be a little bit more cutthroat. I think that your draft status is going to matter a little less, and he's going to be a little bit more old school in his thoughts, especially because a lot of times, especially when players are kept on way too long when they don't have it, it's because the front office is like, oh, we evaluated this guy this way. It's because the coaching. Sean Payton's the one running the ship now. So
with his draft picks, though, it'll probably reset the clock for the last 2 years draft picks. I agree with you. You could see those guys go out an hour earlier. Luke Wattenberg, could
Yep.
be on the bubble. Montreal Washington could be on the bubble. Normally, you see those guys get at least a second year, usually a third,
Yeah.
but probably not going to happen this year. So I think for those day 3 picks, usually the answer is 2 years. But the question on this one that Orange Blood had was high draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah.
and sometimes they don't make the roster at all, because remember, to put a guy, it's like, oh, he could be a practice squad guy, but remember, to put a guy on the practice squad, you got to waive him. So you're basically re-signing him as a free agent. They have to clear waivers, and then he's got a choice to go somewhere else if he wants to.
Yep.
So to get a guy on a practice squad, you actually have to cut them. They didn't make the team. So
Yeah.
I would expect all 6 of these guys to be on the 53 to start.
Certainly possible. But yeah, Samaje P. Ryan, like you said, thank you so much, Robbie Red, for the super. And also thanks, Mike Gibbons, for the super as well. You guys are killing it today. We really feel in love. If you aren't in a position, though, to donate the super chats or anything like that, click thumbs up, share, like, subscribe, all that jazz wherever you're listening. We'd really appreciate that. Lawrence coming in saying, "What's up, guys? What's cooking?" Just some draft analysis. We'll be talking about the Broncos roster here for a bit.
There's some funny conversation going on in the chat about woe is me, Seattle Seahawks, about them stealing your lunch money every year. That's actually kind of funny.
I honestly, Seattle fans,
5-gen owner, looking forward to sending our 2024 first round pick for one of their players to the Seattle. And I think it was Colin talking about, walking around in your Broncos hat and so, hey, thanks for all the picks in Seattle. And I haven't had to pay for a beer since George Payton came to town. Hey, look on the bright side. Look on the bright side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of annoying that it was the Seahawks, because otherwise I'd have really no ill will towards them, especially with how long ago the 2013 Super Bowl blowout was. But is what it is. I guess I have to hate them. So if you're gonna hate anybody, hate them in sports, something that doesn't actually matter. So continuing here, Marvin Mims, Malachi Martin first saying, since we didn't draft a running back, is that a good sign for how they feel about Williams recovering? I think that is more of a sign of how the draft board fell and the opportunities that they had. If the Broncos had kept their 4th or that early 5th that they had, I think you probably would have a running back in this team that they drafted. But alas, didn't fall that way. You only had 5 picks. You were able to turn one of those picks into an additional player in Adam Troutman. Colin's comment there killed me. Yeah, that's I think they're still looking for another running back. And Colin says Nick is the 13th man. God damn it, Colin, you're killing me.
Brutal.
Yeah, I know. That's clowning me. You can't get me down. It's okay. It's Tuesday. We're having fun. Marvin Mims pick here. I don't think that he's definitely a part of the top 4. I'm curious to see if he ends up playing this season more slots in the slot or more snaps. Did I say more slots in the slot? More snaps in the slot or more snaps out at Z? And the big question here for me is the ability to get off press. You have a little bit more of a runway if you are on the slot. You can go either way. The sideline is not a defender in that case. And just with his size, his overall physicality, I'm not sure if he could play long-term on the boundary. He's going to have to show me that he's a little bit more physical. And if not, then just continue to develop the ability to get off the line of scrimmage. But the slot fades, busting the seam. He's pretty much somebody out there that he's going to help you with your ability to create explosive plays. He's not somebody who's going to help you make opposing defenses get out of those 2 high safety shells, which is something that if you had a little bit more of a physical player in the slot, maybe you could still with your personnel, but he screams pass play, 2 high safety, and maybe you can run out of it still with his physical ability to block there. But curious, not a curious pick overall. I get the role for him. Sean Payton likes to have some speed out there no matter what. As soon as Sean Payton came in, there's a lot of talk about drafting speed at wide receiver. So I get it. And he'll be a good player. I gave the pick a B- grade because I thought that maybe you could still get him, a little later. That's where I valued him, 65 to 75. But I definitely think he has a role year 1. And Scott, you hit the nail on the head. This is a guy who's coming in and he's going to be your punt returner this year. He did have 2 muffs in college, but Montreal Washington had 2 muffs in 1 snap. There's no doubt to me that Mims is the guy that you're expecting to play punt return. And even Sean Payton mentioned that he was one of the 2 best punt returners in the entire draft class. So that's your year 1, no doubt route. Competing for wide receiver 3, though, in my opinion, to see what happens with Sutton and Patrick. Maybe they have like a 3A and 3B out there as well.
Yeah, a nice solid rotation in there.
Mhm.
which is good. If everybody's healthy, you've got a 4, and even Hamler is a 5. All of a sudden, your depth's starting to look good with some difference in skill sets out there. And Judy is interesting because he's good enough. You can, the quote is, "We don't have an XYZ. They play everywhere." Judy fits that label really well, and we've had this discussion before in this debate. If you can play outside, you can play inside. A lot of times it's hard to go the other direction. If Mims is a slot receiver, it's hard to get outside. That's where you're running into Patrick Surtain, those guys, and double teams with safeties. You move guys inside to see if you can get them away from double teams and try and get them the ball quicker. But Judy is so valuable because he can play outside as well, despite being, a little on the smaller side. That's okay. He's really good when he's used effectively and the time to throw. So it could be the receiver room could turn into a strength. The passing game could turn into a strength after it was a disaster last year. And it should
Yeah.
be better. Just through osmosis, it should be better.
Yep. And
And I
Austin
did forget
H.
about Marquez Callaway. So I did. I feel bad writing off KJ Hamler, but if it's just me and Nick talking behind the scenes, and I'll just say it now, I've written off KJ Hamler.
For Denver. I'm
For
hoping
Denver.
that
I just don't he hasn't done anything. I just don't see him beating out the guys that have come in. I've written off KJ Hamler to this point.
you hope that you can trade KJ Hamler in a 7 for a 6, just to kind of asset accumulation a little bit. And seems like a great dude. Talented player when he's healthy. I'm really hoping that he can go succeed somewhere in the NFC and the Broncos can flip him. But this Mims pick is we need speed. We don't rely on KJ Hamler anymore. And that's just unfortunate because, again, seems like a good dude. And I know that he was dealing with a lot of mental health stuff. And this has been a rough time for him in the NFL so far. So from the human side of things, hoping that things work out for him more going forward. Dirt Boy 6789 with a 99 cent super chat there. Thanks, Dirt Boy, coming in over on YouTube. We do appreciate that. We also got Dennis Chandler coming in saying, is there a long range plan with Judy, such as working on an extension next year, or is it we need to see what he does in 2023 before talking contract extension? I think everything is on the table with Jerry Jeudy. He could be extended. He could be somebody that they trade. He could be somebody that they let walk. I mean, honestly, there's just been enough conversation surrounding his availability every year. Some of it is because he is a valuable asset and they were looking to get assets to change the complexion and the just the overall makeup of this team. And how do you do that? Well, trading away somebody who's a good player in your team that maybe you don't value as much as fans and some other people. But I think everything is on the table with him. He's going to be here next year. I think I'm like 95% sure, 99% sure saying that. And he has a chance to have a really good season, but it's going to come down to obviously a little bit of luck with health and quarterback and stuff. But a lot of it's going to come down to Jerry Jeudy. We saw flashes down the stretch last season. He has a chance to be the wide receiver 1. And if he doesn't get it this season, there'll be a little bit of blame, for Russell Wilson if there's struggles there and whatnot. But it's not the Nathaniel Hackett clown show. It's not that, he's the only wide receiver out there. It's, Jerry Jeudy. It's mostly on him to show out this season. So hopefully he does.
And you're going to have to change some past history here because, Nick, what has happened the last 2 years with a player like this? How is their season finished? With a player that we're talking about similar to Jerry Jeudy, 1 year on a deal, young, coveted type of player. He hadn't finished a season in Denver.
Yeah.
He's been a midseason trade deadline,
Mhm.
so that's a possibility as well, depending on how the season goes. You want to hang on to young, good players, but if Jeudy starts thinking, and it wouldn't completely surprise me, starts thinking, the grass is greener type, he doesn't have to sign an extension. He'll play on his 5th year extension. So 5th year covers he's got 2 more years of control. Yeah, so 2 more years of control. So it throws me off here. It's like they exercise his option
A year before.
The long-term option right now, Dennis, is you've still got 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that in football, that still is a long term. You'd start thinking about the extension right away. You wouldn't start feeling pressed to get something done until after next season.
Yeah.
Until after next year. So the summer, fast forward 12 months and we're having this discussion for real. But 2 years is fairly good control on a guy,
Yep.
Dennis, especially when it's the money's guaranteed to Jerry Jeudy, and he's a young guy you like. So I'd say a 2-year guaranteed contract is long-term thinking in the not for a long league.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Obviously, you have two pretty good wide receivers in his class that are going to get paid about the same time as him. Uh, Somebody who went a little bit, two guys who went right after him, CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. Obviously, I don't think he should get either of those guys money from what they've done so far, but they've been in better situations. So pulling for Jeudy all around. And, if there was ever a time to show out and be the guy that they drafted you to be 15 overall, then that's good. But overall, it's a solid pick at 15 overall because, I mean, we talked about earlier, Isaiah Simmons not getting that fifth-year option, Chase Young not getting that fifth-year option, Cesar Ruiz not getting that fifth-year option. Maybe he's somebody to keep an eye on. The Saints drafted him first round from Michigan to play center, and obviously has some experience with Zach Strief out there, and obviously Sean Payton as well. So maybe he's somebody to keep an eye on for the Broncos going forward as well. He's a massive center type who looked good last season and struggled the first few years. So get those rookie struggle contract years out of the way and then pay to bring him in a familiarity here, but we'll see.
You'd like to get that deal done this time next year going in. The Falcons did it with Chris Lindstrom, a Pro Bowl player, and he's on his fifth-year option this year, and then his extension kicks in for the next 5 years. That's kind of what you'd like to see happen. If he goes into the 2024 season without a contract other than his fifth-year option, starts getting interesting. And again, and I see Lawrence saying if he trades Jeudy, I'm going to be at my sign up mile high saying fire Peyton. Might not be up to Peyton. Jerry Jeudy didn't have to sign a contract. You have to remember there's two sides to all this stuff. And if a guy wants out, why would you re-sign him? If I can get a first-round pick for him or I can get something, why am I going to give a guy, especially wide receiver money, 5 years minimum, $90 million, and you don't want to be here?
Yep. I honestly think that Peyton's third in line in terms of that decision. I think it's Sean Payton, and then it's Greg Penner, and then it's George Payton. As crazy as it is, I think Penner actually has a little bit more.
Jerry Jeudy might be here longer than George Payton.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So let's keep...
take that one. Who's here longer? Jerry Jeudy or George Payton?
I'd probably go with Jerry Jeudy at this point.
Probably go with Jerry Jeudy.
Yep. So we'll see. That's the future, right? We're projecting, and we're going to continue projecting here. Drew Sanders, year one. This is my favorite pick of the entire draft for the Broncos. Yeah, I thought he was somebody who should go. The first round talk was rich for me, always was, but I thought he was somebody, 40 to 55 range, mid-second, especially with his instincts, athleticism, his playmaking ability. And then Broncos end up getting him at 67. Obviously, still pretty new to the Mike linebacker, middle linebacker spot there, but that's what he did a lot at Georgia. Georgia would play a lot of, or excuse me, not Georgia, Arkansas would play a lot of 3 defensive linemen, and they'd walk him down to edge. They really love to walk him in between their defensive end and their like nose tackle type, kind of line up over a B gap as a stand-up pass rusher, and will he come, will he go?
Spot.
Yeah, it's a good spot for him.
Pass rush, pick your spot.
Yep. Not too much A gap stuff.
And then move.
For him. Yeah. Yeah, not too much A gap from what I saw, but solid player. I will say that, people kind of projecting him to be this like absolute menace, freak speed kind of guy, watching him like close space. He does it well, but he doesn't do it like, it's not like watching like Devin White out there or Micah Parsons close ground where it's like, oh my God, like you're like playing on rookie mode and you're like linebackers just zipping past guys. Looks like you're on ice skates speed wise compared to some of those other guys, but fun player, good player, a lot of different finesse moves. I think you can feel his lack of length sometimes out there. And my biggest concern with him is that way too many almost plays. There's a few plays where the quarterback, zips out of him, not even like great athletes like Spencer Rattler is like getting around him because he's just off balance, or players in space where he's just kind of like getting hula hooped around them. So gonna have to work on some of his finer aspects of specifically tackling and taking on blocks. But year one, how do I see Drew Sanders? I don't think he is technically a starter for your defense, specifically in base downs. I think you do keep Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton, especially again, talking about some of those finer aspects of playing the off-ball linebacker spot, the middle linebacker spot. I think he's still developing those, but you're talking in sub packages, you're talking in just different ways. You're going to rotate him in there, and he's going to be somebody who he's going to be a pressure player. You're going to use him in situations to blitz, give you some of the more exotic looks up front. He's not going to be so niche that, he's only coming in on like 3rd and 10 and whatnot. There'll be some second down plays. There'll be some first down plays where he's getting rotated in there. But I think mainly he's going to be a rotational player. If you're like, let's say I don't want to have Alex Singleton in coverage here, I'm going to bring in instead Drew Sanders, who, because of his ability as a pass rusher, is more valuable in those pass rush downs, even if the coverage ability isn't, plus he is an incredible athlete. But that's how I see him year one. And also, of course, Peyton mentioned this as well, and this is one of my favorite things, a core 4 special teamer. He is tenacious. He runs well. He's physical. He's going to be punt coverage, kick coverage, punt return, kick return. You'll see him out there.
The comp that I've used on him is Caden Ellis, who played for the New Orleans Saints last year. For a lot of reasons, because it makes sense. They're similar positions. And if you look at snap counts in 11 games for Caden Ellis, when he was on the field, about 600 snaps, 550 snaps or so. And run defense, he had 294. And then in passing downs, he blitzed about 1 every 3 times he was out there.
Yep.
So, it was coverage, and the coverage snaps aren't necessarily passing downs. That could be it's 1st and 10 and he drops back in coverage. He was a blitz linebacker when he was on the field in pass coverage. So I don't want him matching up against Kelsey and all these guys out here. I want him go get the passer. Don't think about it. Just wind him up, point and shoot, go get him. And I think that's where you're going to see him early on, where you can start getting pressure from different spots instead of just counting on the edge rushers and interior. Because you may have as much. Draymond was pretty good at getting at interior pass rush. Deshaun Williams wasn't great at it. But I think it'll help you get more pressure up the middle. You remember the game last year, obviously. It was one of the first 2 touchdowns the Seattle Seahawks had, where the play call was correct, but Alex Singleton was sloughed off by Geno Smith.
Yep, I was there.
Now you've got a guy like that who's maybe a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit bigger, that doesn't fall off of here. And instead of a touchdown, you've got a sack. That was a game-changing play right there that Geno made, and Alex didn't. I see him being used in times like that. And maybe you don't see Singleton and Jewell on the field as much in 3rd down.
I will say that one of my concerns about Drew Sanders is that you see him sloughed off too often in that specific type of situation from the tape that I watched. But
maybe
I
he's
think
there a little sooner, though, and
yes,
he's there a step faster, and he's able to force the action a little bit better.
Yep, he's better at the pass rush moves, more fluid, better balance, more explosive, and that kind of thing. So you're right, he's there a little sooner. Maybe that changes things where Geno can't even step up and become an attacking player moving forward versus in that drop back situation. So you're right on that. But yeah, I think early on, I don't expect him. I think he's in a great situation too. He's still extremely new to the position, and in terms of the skill sets of the linebacker's position, specifically taking on and shedding blockers, he struggled with that. I saw too often, a guard would get to him and he'd just be completely washed out sometimes. And if you're playing a 3-4, like that's not what you want in the run game. And so I think he needs to be a little bit better there of his positioning, his leverage, his ability to take on and get rid of offensive linemen, and also just his tackling technique from the second level. It's a little bit different than, your edge rushers, how they have to tackle and whatnot, because you're arriving to guys in space that are weapons versus, sometimes in the backfield and whatnot. So those are areas that he needs to work on. And because of that, I think it's an ideal situation for him to be year one, kind of a super sub player. And then after this, I think he steps in very nicely for Josey Jewell, who then you can let walk. Mm-hmm. So I think that you could trade Josey Jewell, but I think it's honestly better for your position overall. And for Sanders, if he comes in year one and, he's going to get out there, but I think it's a dip your toe in, and he's only out there break in case of emergency because of injuries.
And we've said all year, trade Josey Jewell now. It doesn't make sense to move these guys going into this year. This roster is set up to blow it up after this year, including Sutton, including Patrick, including Jewell, including Randy Gregory, including Russell Wilson. Yeah. I don't see a ton of movement with the current players, and we haven't this year. Next year, depending on how things go, it's going to be a wildly different roster in 2024.
Yep. Yeah, we got Cristiano coming in saying, morning, guys. Joining late. That's okay. Glad to catch you live. Awesome work on the draft by the whole team. Nick rocked. Nick is tired, but Nick appreciates it also. Donald Willison coming in here. Willison saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We appreciate you. We had Zach Power saying, I've heard Drew Sanders has Baron Browning comparison, better at edge than inside linebacker, but he misses size and length. Browning was a better athlete and longer. And I think he has a little bit just more power in his game. So I think Browning is actually a better edge. Sanders, I think he actually has. I saw some instinctual plays out there. I think he's a little bit more fluid in his coverage ability as well. And he's also just a little bit smaller, more of a compact frame. So I think Sanders is going to be a pressure player with Browning. I think Browning has a good home as an edge player. So I think they're both there's some similarities there, but I think they're each in their correct spots.
When you
for
can
now.
get 150 tackles and sign for $1 million, it tells me I want to play edge.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
know, you got fourth string edge guys making $4 and $5 million. I mean, it tells you about the value of the position. Browning should stay at edge.
And we got Troy coming in saying, Nick, inside joke from the draft pods. I vote no hat in the morning. Over the months, we may get some amazing collage of bedhead looks. Thing is, I sometimes work out in the morning. I go get a run in, do some hit, and then walk the dog. So I don't want to disgrace Scott over here with the bedhead. Scott's got the flow going on. I don't need the crazy like curls and stuff going on that I kind of have, the wavy hair. So yeah,
I
no,
go
it's
for intentional bedhead now.
yeah, it's a vibe, right?
Must
We're
it
about
up
the
a little
vibes.
bit.
But yeah, no, Drew Sanders. Do you disagree with anything? I kind of took over there on
No,
the
you've watched
role.
him so much more than I have when we go through these guys. You know, the next two I've seen a little bit more closely. I feel like we're running out of time here. I feel like we've talked a lot of Riley Moss. I want to talk about JL Skinner a little bit because I watched him again as I was putting together his clips for the YouTube channels. And my God, can he move? He just glides. You know, when you're watching him, it's it's hard to put into words or hard to quantify what you see when you see an athlete who's just a better athlete than everybody else. They just glide and they're quicker when they go side to side. They kind of bounce instead of shuffle. And they were walking him up almost as an outside linebacker at the Senior Bowl. And he's, 6'4", 210. We talk about, who was your best edge defender last year, Nick? You've heard us kind of joke about it. I'm serious half the time. Who's your best edge? Who was the best at setting the edge last year?
Jonathan Cooper.
K'Wan Williams was.
Oh, well, yeah.
He
was. Yeah.
K'Wan Williams, your slot corner at 180 pounds, I thought did a better job of actually setting an edge and getting in and putting his shoulder into a blocker's chest to set that edge than any of your actual edge defenders.
Yeah.
You can use this guy like that. He's walking up as an outside linebacker, doing that in the slot where all of a sudden he can turn his hips and run with a receiver or a tight end also. We mentioned that, they think one of the reasons this guy fell was because of the injury. Well, when was this injury? Because at the Senior Bowl, he looked good, really good. And 6th round, this guy's a steal.
He tore his pec 2 days before the combine, just doing normal
lifting. There you go, in between then. Okay.
Yep. Normal lifting. Watching the tape, does he just look like a weird body type to you? Like he's so slender.
I don't know if you remember, like Pat Watkins was a safety, long time ago safety. Teddy Hendricks was named the Stork way back when. So some of these old guys, he reminds me of an old school. Merton Hanks was a corner who had this big floppy really long arm, and his head he actually leaned into it. So the body type it might be different, but there's precedent there for me. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here for a second. There's precedence there for me with that long lean, and the number one guy he was a 5-star guy at Florida State named Pat Watkins, that really kind of set the tone for safeties in the early 2000s. What you're looking for. But let me bring this guy up here real quick. JL, I've got enough of them. I'm having a hard time finding him. There we go. The way he moves, and again, like I said, here he is. He's almost a walk-up outside linebacker at this point. But I mean, he takes one shuffle step and he covers so much ground. He lined up in the slot again here. Gets rid of the blocker and forces it wide. I mean, he's an edge defender. He's in space here. How about a punch to the chest? Okay. I really, really like what I see out of him and the ways that you will be able to use a guy like this that can cover so much ground in his first 2 steps. He's out on the edge again here. I mean, that's a linebacker slot almost, an old school 4-3. And I just love the way he moves and his tenacity.
Yeah, that's he's a fun one, and I know that a lot of people had him in like late third, early fourth, and then Broncos get him a six because that injury. But we got Dennis Chandler coming in first, $2, and also the comment here, DWI is coming in $50, saying running back Jacques Patrick accepted invite to the Broncos minicamp, just finished playing for the XFL for the Brahms. I don't know. I don't know what XFL team. So that's didn't watch much XFL this year. Too busy getting ready for the draft. Second in the league in rushing yards and led all running backs and receiving yards. Do you know more about this guy? I remember him at Florida State, I believe.
Here's your Latavius Murray replacement.
He's like giant, right? He's like
He's
240
big. He's
pounds.
6'3", 230 pounds, short yardage guy. On 134 carries in 2017, he had 7 touchdowns. So 17 touchdowns on, against just 1,790 yards. Probably would play a little fullback, decent, I would think, based on his numbers in college. Receiver out of the backfield. He had 21 catches in 2017, 16 catches in 2018. Splits time there, but he is a big dude at 6'3", 230 plus pounds. But I'm reading numbers to you. You could find that out on your own. That's my interpretation based on what I see. I haven't watched him play.
Yeah, I remember at Florida State, I just remember him being big, but I remember him like running into the butts of his offensive linemen pretty consistently, and somebody who was very much a plotter, not a lot of explosiveness. But if you block it in front of him and you have some Moses parting in the seas kind of blocking with the power gap, I think he can be pretty good there. So somebody who's going to come in and compete for a spot. Somebody, Tyler Beatty, that Tony Jones, I think is another running back that came in there. You're going to have to figure out what's going on at your running back room and taking a lot of the shotgun approach there. I think it makes a lot of sense. But back to JL Skinner, again, just watching him on those highlights there, this is so me being, first guy off the bus aesthetic wise. It's just he's got such a weird frame. I'm curious about his ability to handle physicality, especially if you're playing up against tight ends out there. He doesn't have, I think he only had a fine like arm length for the position, considering how tall he is. You're hoping like he's in like the 90th percentile or something. And I don't think he had like crazy long arms or anything out there. But granted, I thought he was a 4th-round pick, somebody who could be your third safety, come down and walk down and play some box stuff out there in your pass downs, and somebody who I thought could project pretty well as a tight end stopper in the league. Unfortunately, my favorite tight end stopper in this entire draft was the guy the Chiefs ended up taking in the 4th round, whose name's escaping me right now, who played safety and was like 6 foot, 220 pounds, and like really good versus tight ends and running backs in the game. But from Virginia Tech. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, but I think where you got him, yes.
Maury Connor.
Yes, I liked him. Unfortunately, I thought I was like, round 6, round 7.
I can tell you're not a wrestling fan with the Brahmas. That's a bull.
Okay. That sounds right.
Yeah. That was, and unfortunately when you change tabs now on StreamYard, it puts you in this big delay. So apologies if you're listening and you won't care because you can't tell, but we end up looking kind of funnier, I should say.
Yeah.
But yeah, The Rock was the big Brahma bull. He even had a bull on his tights. So those are bulls.
Okay. Well, fun. I feel like I've seen that before. But Skinner, I think he's somebody, special teams day one, maybe going to come in. And I think the Delaren Turner Yell, you're on notice. PJ Locke, you're on notice. I don't see him beating out Caden Stearns. I think he's a completely different kind of player than Caden Stearns, really. But somebody that you're going to be happy to have out there, some size, some special teams ability. I think he said that he's about a month, 2 months away from being football ready again.
Box safety. I mean, he's a dime slot box safety, one of your 6, however you want to call it. We talk about positionless football. He's in a dime package. He's one of your 6, and he's close to the line of scrimmage. That's how I see him.
Yeah, just a interesting body type all around. I am
See why he's not a receiver. He's got tiny hands. Tiny man hand. He's got 8 1/4 inch hands. That's Kenny Pickett hands. He's
first
6'4".
percentile. First percentile. Yep, for that one. Kind of weird hand size there. My another big question with him is how much bigger can he get? 4 years at Boise State now. Boise State isn't, Georgia, LSU, or anything like that with their weightlifting programs or strength and conditioning. But, he was a senior. And when you see somebody that long in the program that still looks that wiry, you wonder if it's, a biological, physical kind of thing where maybe he can't put on more weight. Now he had a pec injury.
30 years old and, has to stop eating. But yeah, I mean, 220 should be okay. You mentioned the trouble tackling someone there. No, he's 209 right now.
Yeah, they listed him at 220, 225. I'm going to call
he measured 209 and 211 at the Senior Bowl in the Combine.
and he didn't test at the combine, so he could have put on a bunch of weight
Yeah,
and been
but
fine there.
what I mean by
Yeah,
220 should be okay is that I think he can play at 220
I hope so.
eventually in the next couple of years. And part of that is, what do you talk about the lack of the tackling? Well, part of that is the arms aren't as strong as they should be. He's
Mhm.
210. You put 10 pounds up in your upper body, and if he's playing 225, where he gets
Now we're
into a
talking.
legit strength and conditioning program, not that Boise's not legit, but as he matures,
Mhm.
some people mature at 25, some people never mature. Where I think he could be a 220, 225 guy, and the strength will come with it, some of that old man strength, that he could become a better tackler. But those first couple steps that he covers is pretty special for what you're looking out there. And again, I would probably want him close to the line of scrimmage, where you're not worrying as much about his change of direction and the length, where usually you have the quick twitch guys, in the slot. He looks like they play him like a 4-3 linebacker,
Mhm.
except in a nickel, he wouldn't be expected to take on tight ends in the running game.
Yeah, it's we'll be curious. I know that Justin Simmons also, came in a wiry kind of safety, 6'2", 202. So there's precedent to that. Now, granted, Justin Simmons tested exceptionally in like everything besides the 40-yard dash. But it's going to be fun. And, what a better player to kind of learn from than Justin Simmons for that body type and whatnot. But yeah, the tackling is definitely something that he's going to have to work on there. Will be fun. And there's also still talk the Broncos might bring back Kareem Jackson to be your fourth safety and kind of the player coach in the room. Might not get a lot of reps on the field, but somebody that you like to have back there. There's just a lot of talk about that. So,
And you know what 6'4" DBs with that kind of size like to do? They like to block kicks.
mhm.
So, another special teams possibility out there, because he can slide in between tacklers. I like the athleticism. We're talking 6th round here. Now, this is part of the reason why I'm excited is the value versus the risk reward that you can get from this player. No, I don't want him in the first. Don't get me wrong, but in the 6th round, I think he could outplay that significantly over the course of his Broncos career, and that's what you're looking for.
Yep. I agree. And final one we'll talk about here is Alex Forsyth. We're going to have to make it a little quick. I thought, when they took him, they added more compensatory picks. I think in this draft, it was the first one where they added, I think, 4 picks in the 7th round. So this draft was 4 picks longer than regular before. So the Broncos get him the 3rd to last pick. This guy wouldn't even have been selected before. So interesting to see that and learn that. But Alex Forsyth, a guy who a lot of people are stating that he kind of messed up the post-draft process, where he's somebody who should have gone and competed in the Senior Bowl and then not tested because he's more of a gamer than he is a tester. So the fact that he did the opposite was somewhat poor advice for whoever is representing him. But people in the Oregon program have spoken extremely high about him, a leader and somebody who offers some positional flexibility. I would be pretty surprised if he came in year 1 and beat out Lloyd Cushenberry, considering how long it typically takes for centers, even ones who have played a lot of snaps in college. But he has a chance to come in and do that. It's going to be an open competition for that center spot. So, golden opportunity for him to come in. He's not the most physically imposing player, not the strongest player at the point of attack, but has a lot of snaps out there. Again, some positional versatility at guard and center. Maybe he ends up the starter. I think it's much more likely he's your center 2 coming in the season, and he's somebody who's going to kick 5th round pick, just like JL Skinner might kick off Delarian Turner-Yell, might kick off a 5th round pick last season. Wattenberg off the roster for a similar type of profile with, I think, better projectable center ability.
Yeah, and one of the guys I had comped him to was Ben Jones. Again, Ben Jones would walk up to camps and people would be like, "This guy, he's knock-kneed, puffy, round face." Then he whipped everybody they put in front of him. That said, I just looked up his combine numbers, and they were still significantly better than Alex Forsyth's. That again, he's got to be a better player than Tester, because as a tester, he wouldn't make the cut. So
Yeah.
you got to throw that out the window. And now let's see. Now, all that doesn't matter. You will never have to do a vertical jump again for the rest of your life. Go play football. And he's one of those guys. I say you don't get to learn a lot during OTAs, and you still might not, because they're not putting pads on and they're not hitting it until fall practice in August. but he's one I would keep a close eye on. But for me, Lloyd Cushenberry is your day one starter. Just lock it in. This guy, he's not beating out Lloyd Cushenberry in his first year. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't seem.
Fuller's got what, 4 starts in his career for a reason. You
Mhm.
know, it's Cushenberry right now.
Yep. And if it's not, it'll be somewhat of a surprise. But anything can happen. And that's why they're going to come in and compete. And pretty much Sean Payton has said as such. Doesn't care where you were drafted or your contract or anything. Everybody's going to go in and earn their spot. I think the only players that I can comfortably come in and say that don't have to come in and earn their spot would be Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons. And even then, they're still going to have to. But like the quality of players they are, it's going to be pretty obvious. So other than that, though,
They've
gauntlet
already
thrown down.
earned their spots.
Yeah, good freaking luck, everybody. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. We went 1 hour and 5 today, and it's time to get out of here. But first, Patrick comes in saying a kind and compassionate aloha to you, gents. I will watch later while I sip coffee. My coffee's almost out, so I got to go refill and get a little bit more. You know, I like to get in 50 ounces a day, about probably of that Lion coffee out there. Maybe not the best for me long term, but it's good for my soul. But any final thoughts, Scott, before we wrap it up? Real quick, Riley Moss, I think he's got a chance to win the starting cornerback spot opposite Surtain this season. I think he's going to compete with Damari Mathis. And if he doesn't, he's going to be somebody who's going to rotate and factor into your top 6 in the back end. They
Yeah,
did.
I was thinking top 4. You know, with you've got K1, you've got Mathis and Surtain. So when you say 6, you might just mean defensive backs as a whole. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. You find a place for him, where I think it gives you a good chance to be versatile in the backfield with those 4 guys plus Justin Simmons. Hopefully, Caden Stearns. We'll see what Skinner can do. It should be some good depth back there. We knew that cornerback was a little bit scary. He went and got a corner. He's a good one. He's a really good one. 6 foot, 190, 40-inch vertical leap, 4.45 on the 40. Really good athlete. Some boomer bust in his game. I feel like there's some gambling that must take place there because he gets beat, but gets a lot of interceptions. So, you know, we'll see how that pans out. But a pick that I think we're all pretty happy with.
Yeah. He'll be in the Broncos. They've really sucked the last 4 years at taking the ball away. I mean, they've been good defense, but like they just are horrible at turnovers. Right. And Moss is somebody who's just everywhere he's gone has been able to turn the ball over. So he's had quite the journey to where he's at right now as well. So great story. TV Randall, good morning, fellas. I hope everyone's going well. Appreciate your work. Appreciate you as well. DJ John saying Moss won't be starting. Well, Moss was drafted in this regime, and Damari Mathis was drafted in the last regime. So we'll see what happens there. And I think Drew Sanders and Moss, I would have equal opportunity to start right now.
No, I think even if you're not starting, are you number 1 in a package? So that's, you know, starting is so relative, you know, especially when I see running backs. It's like, well, why is Melvin Gordon starting? Well, he ran the first, you know, couple plays and he was out on 3rd down and we never saw him again. Who cares who's starting? So when I think of starting, DJ, I think of, is he number 1 in specific packages? Is he in this? Is he in first team when they go to nickel? Is he first team when he goes to dime? That's all that really matters. And I think he's got a chance to be a big time contributor and get a lot of snaps on defense.
And just listening to the press conference, the way they talked about him, like they gave up a good haul to go get him. Yeah. Right. Like, and I think that if Drew Sanders wasn't there, I think they were a little bit surprised to see Sanders fall to where he did. So they took him. But given how much they gave up to go up and get Moss, you're almost curious if they would have taken him at 67, 68 if they had stayed there, because they said that they did as much work on him as anybody, meeting with him in every step of the way. So somebody in that building really likes him. The other part about this with Moss and believe in him is that you got Christian Parker there, who's arguably one of the top position coaches in the entirety of the NFL. I mean, enjoy Christian Parker right now because I believe this is probably his last year in Denver because he's going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere this upcoming season or the year after. He is a rising superstar coach. People just rave about the dude. And I mean, proof's in the pudding. What he's done with the defensive backs has been pretty damn awesome in Denver. So be fun. I think overall, great draft class. Every single one of these guys has special teams pathway forward this season, and some of them can rotate. Hopefully all can stay healthy. And I feel much better about this draft class than I did a year ago's draft class. I loved the round 4 picks a year ago. Everything other than that, I was a little bit sketchy on. I guess I liked Henningsen as well in the 6th round, but that's, getting pretty far down there.
Owuzurike a lot.
Mathis too. I loved Mathis. We were bucking him to 96 to the Broncos pretty regularly, and they get him at what was it, 104 or whatever it was.
But yeah,
So,
but the title of this show today was, where do they fit? And it's easy
mhm.
to see where these guys fit in the lineups. And it's not just, again, going back to the starting 22. No, it's not that. It's package football. It's base
Yeah,
packages, sub
matchup.
packages. Where do they fit in this? Okay, well, this is a good fifth defensive back. This is a good sixth defensive back. Slot them right in. Backup center. Special teams player extraordinaire in Sanders going out there and coming in at one of the single linebacker positions on 3rd and 14. If you're in a dime and you've got one linebacker out there, makes sense to have him out there and turn him loose. So it
Yeah.
should be a lot of fun to see how this pans out.
Yeah, it will be a lot of fun. A lot of fun today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you're all doing well. And make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. If you're listening to us after the fact over on iTunes or Spotify, scroll down and leave us a 5-star rating and review. There's a lot of good Broncos content out there, but we like to think that we do it a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit more of a inclusive community with the chats. It's a conversation with us. It's not just us preaching to you guys and ignoring you. You guys are very much part of the fold, and being a part of the fold means that you should probably, give us a rating and a review to help us a lot. Also, subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Click the thumbs up on each show. I see that we have a lot of eyeballs in here still, but not as many Facebook reacts as we deserve, although I do like that number 18, Omaha out there. So click the thumbs up on the way out the board, subscribe, like, and share on YouTube. And Scott and I will see you guys again tomorrow morning over on Coast to Coast Football. And I'll be joining you guys again tonight with Mile High Huddle with Carl Dumler on building the Broncos. But Scott, any final thoughts before I wrap this baby on up?
No, it's time to start turning to some power rankings, maybe. Some national thoughts on this. But again, we like to react to what you want to talk about rather than just come up here and have a monologue. So we'll see you Thursday morning, and looking forward to continuing the conversation about an exciting offseason. In the end, we were looking forward to it last year, and that kind of went up in smoke early. I have more faith this year in what the Denver Broncos, the type of product that they will put up there.
Competency. We're aiming for competency, baby. And hopefully the show is hitting your guys' competency as well. Hope you're doing great. You guys continue to choose kindness and compassion. We love you guys. Have a great one. Go Broncos.